poor girl is mocked at a luxury party, but when she reveals her true identity, everyone is left speechless and full of regret. Elowen stood at the entrance of the grand mansion, her heart pounding in her chest. The towering columns and sparkling chandeliers made her feel small and out of place. She tugged at the hem of her second-hand dress, wishing it was something more fitting for such an extravagant occasion. The laughter and chatter of the wealthy guests echoed around her, making her insecurities swell like a storm. "Look at her," a voice chimed, slicing through the noise. It was Serafina, the famed socialite, known for her sharp tongue. Her eyes gleamed with mischief as she pointed at Elowen. "Who let the poor artist in? This isn't a charity event." Laughter erupted from her group of friends, and Elowen felt the heat rise in her cheeks. She forced a smile, but inside, a wave of humiliation crashed over her. Why did she think she could come here? She had always wanted to belong to a world that seemed so distant from her own. But here she was, surrounded by people whose lives sparkled with wealth and privilege, while she felt like a shadow lurking in the corner. As she tried to navigate the crowded room, her mind raced. Was she really meant to be here? Every glance and whispered comment felt like a spotlight, exposing her worth in a way that made her stomach churn. She caught glimpses of the shimmering gowns and tailored suits, each outfit a statement of success she had yet to achieve. The pressure of their expectations weighed heavily on her shoulders. "Why did I even come?" she whispered to herself, feeling the walls of the room close in. She turned away from the laughter, seeking refuge in the quietest corner she could find. The vibrant colors of the decorations blurred into a haze as self-doubt enveloped her. In the shadows, Elowen watched as laughter echoed from the center of the room. They talked about art, fashion, and the latest trends, but none of it felt real to her. She was an outsider, peering into a world that seemed so foreign. The conversations were like a foreign language, filled with words she struggled to understand. Who was she kidding? An artist at a gala? It felt like a cruel joke. As she stood there, lost in her thoughts, she recalled her journey, the countless hours spent painting in her tiny studio, the struggles to make ends meet, and the sacrifices she had made to pursue her passion. The memories of late nights and early mornings flooded back to her, reminding her of the fire that once burned inside. But now, that fire felt dim, overshadowed by the glitz and glamour around her. "Maybe I should just go," she contemplated, glancing toward the exit. But just as she turned, her gaze caught on Julian stepping onto the stage. He was a rising star, known for his talent and authenticity. Elowen had admired him from afar, always wishing she could possess even a fraction of his confidence. With each word Julian spoke, Elowen felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. "True talent is not about appearances," he declared passionately. "It's about the heart and soul poured into the work." His voice resonated with her, wrapping around her insecurities like a warm embrace. Could someone really understand her struggles? Could they see past the surface and recognize her worth? As Julian continued to speak, she felt a spark of courage swell within her. Maybe she didn't have to hide in the shadows. Perhaps, just perhaps, she could speak up. But doubts clawed at her. What if they laughed again? What if she became the punchline of another cruel joke? Yet, amidst the chaos of her thoughts, a whisper of determination began to bloom. Elowen took a deep breath, her heart racing with the weight of her decision. She could not let this moment slip away. She deserved to be seen, to be heard, even if the path ahead was uncertain and fraught with fear. The laughter around her faded into the background as she steeled herself for what lay ahead. Would she dare to step into the light and reveal her truth? With Julian's words echoing in her mind, Elowen felt a shift within. The night was still young, and perhaps, just perhaps, it held the key to her transformation. Elowen stepped back into the shadows of the grand hall, her heart racing as she tried to catch her breath. The laughter and chatter of the elegant guests felt like a distant hum, fading into the background. She leaned against a marble pillar, seeking solace away from the bright lights and polished smiles that seemed to mock her. As she stood there, Elowen thought about her journey as an artist. Memories flooded her mind, flashes of her small studio, the scent of paint, and the late nights spent pouring her heart into canvases that few had ever seen. She had sacrificed so much to chase her dreams, juggling multiple jobs just to pay the bills. "I can't believe I'm here," she whispered to herself, feeling the weight of her choices. "Is this really what I wanted?" The room around her sparkled with wealth and privilege. She looked at the guests in their designer outfits, laughing and mingling effortlessly. Each smile and gesture reminded her of how different her life was. Elowen had grown up in a modest home where every penny counted. "I worked hard for this," she reminded herself, but the thought wasn't enough to erase the sting of inadequacy that crept into her heart. She closed her eyes, and flashbacks overtook her. She saw herself, as a child, sitting in a cramped bedroom, surrounded by sketches and paints. "One day, I will be someone," she had promised herself. But life had not been easy. She recalled long days at the cafe, serving customers with a smile while dreaming of a world where her art would be celebrated. "Maybe I should have just stuck to painting in my little studio," Elowen mumbled, a hint of regret coloring her voice. Just then, a familiar voice broke through her thoughts. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?" The room quieted as Julian, the evening's host and a respected figure in the art community, stepped onto the stage. His presence was magnetic, and Elowen felt her heart skip a beat. She had admired him from afar, always wishing she could have a conversation with someone like him. Julian cleared his throat, his eyes scanning the crowd. "Tonight, we celebrate creativity and the artists who dare to share their visions with the world." Elowen leaned in, her pulse quickening. "Maybe he will say something that resonates with me," she thought, hopeful. He continued, "I want to talk about authenticity. In a world that often values appearances over true talent, it is our responsibility to look deeper. Art is not just about what we see, it is about what we feel." His words hung in the air, wrapping around Elowen like a warm embrace. She felt a flicker of hope igniting inside her. Could he really understand her struggles? "Every artist faces challenges," Julian said, his voice strong and sincere. "We must push through the doubts and fears. Do not let the opinions of others define your worth. Your art matters." Elowen's heart swelled at his encouragement. She wanted to leap from the shadows, to shout that she was one of those artists, but doubt held her back. "Perhaps, if I could just talk to him," she thought, glancing at the stage. "Maybe he would see the passion I put into my work." But the fear of rejection gripped her tightly. What if he laughed? What if he dismissed her just like Serafina had? As Julian continued speaking, Elowen felt her internal battle intensify. "I have to do something," she whispered to herself. "I can't keep hiding." The flicker of hope grew into a flame of possibility. Maybe, just maybe, this was the moment she had been waiting for. "Let your voice be heard," Julian urged, his eyes shining with conviction. "Don't let anyone dim your light." Elowen took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of his words seep into her bones. She was tired of feeling invisible, tired of hiding behind the walls she had built around herself. Perhaps it was time to step into the light, to share her story. As the applause erupted around her, Elowen felt a surge of courage. "I will not stay silent any longer," she thought, determination filling her heart. The night was still young, and perhaps it was time for her to break free from the shadows. As Julian stood at the front of the room, his voice resonated with passion. He spoke about authenticity, a word that hung in the air like a promise. "We live in a world that values appearances over true talent," he declared, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. "But it is time for us to look beyond what we see on the surface. True art comes from the heart, and it deserves to be recognized." Elowen listened intently, her heart racing. His words felt like a warm light cutting through the fog of her insecurities. She felt seen in a way she had not before. The laughter and chatter of the wealthy guests faded into the background, replaced by the steady beat of her own thoughts. Could I really be myself here? She wondered. A flicker of courage sparked within her. As Julian continued, his message became a lifeline for Elowen. We must support one another and embrace our true selves, he urged. Each of us has a story to tell, and each story matters. She could feel the weight of his words settling deep within her. The struggle she had faced as an artist, working odd jobs, battling self-doubt, flashed before her eyes. But as much as she felt empowered, a wave of uncertainty washed over her. Should she remain silent and blend back into the shadows? Or should she step forward and reveal her true identity? What if they laugh again? She thought, her heart pounding louder with each passing moment. Who here has the courage to stand up and share their story? Julian's voice rang out, breaking through her thoughts. The room fell silent. Elowen's breath caught in her throat. She could feel the weight of the decision bearing down on her. Do it, a small voice inside her urged. This is your moment. But fear gripped her tightly. She glanced around the room, at the polished faces and extravagant clothes. The memory of Seraphina's cruel words flashed in her mind. What if they don't believe me? She thought, her confidence wavering. Just then, Julian's eyes met hers. There was no judgment there, only encouragement. You are not alone, he seemed to say without words. In that moment, Elowen realized he was speaking directly to her, just as he had spoken to everyone in the room. His message was universal, yet it felt personal. Taking a deep breath, she stood up slowly. The room remained quiet, all eyes turning toward her. Her voice wavered at first, but she pressed on. I have something to say. The words felt strange, yet powerful. I am Elowen, she began, her heart racing. I am an artist, and I have created a collection that will be displayed in a gallery soon. The crowd shifted, whispers rippling through the air. She could see surprise and disbelief on their faces, but she pushed through. I know I don't fit in here. I know my dress is not as expensive as yours, and my background is different. But my art is a part of me, just as much as any of you are a part of your own stories. Seraphina's expression changed, her mouth falling slightly open. Elowen took a deep breath, feeling the courage swell inside her. I have struggled, just like many of you, she continued. I have faced judgment and doubt, but I have also faced my truth, and I want to share that with you. The silence that followed felt heavy, but it was no longer filled with mockery. Instead, Elowen sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The guests began to lean in, their interest piqued. Julian smiled at her, a look of pride on his face. I hope you will see my art for what it is, an expression of my journey and my passion, Elowen concluded, her voice steady now, not just as a product of someone who doesn't belong. As she sat down, her heart raced with a mix of fear and exhilaration. The crowd was still silent, but she could feel a change. She had stood up for herself, and in doing so, she had opened a door for others to see her true self. In that moment, she understood that authenticity was indeed a powerful force. It could bridge gaps that appearances had created. Elowen felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She had taken a step toward revealing her true self, and that was just the beginning. Elowen took a deep breath, her heart racing as she stood at the edge of the crowd. The music faded into the background, and the laughter and chatter seemed to blur. She felt a rush of adrenaline course through her veins, a mix of fear and excitement. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment that could change everything. Just say it, she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible above the noise. They need to know. With her heart pounding, she stepped forward. The room quieted as she raised her voice, a tremor in her tone. Excuse me, everyone. The guests turned their heads, curiosity flickering in their eyes. Elowen swallowed hard. She had their attention. I want to share something important with you all, she said, feeling the weight of their gazes. I am the artist behind the collection that will soon be displayed at the Sterling Gallery. A hush fell over the room. Shock spread like wildfire, and she could see the disbelief on their faces. Whispers erupted among the guests, some leaning closer to catch every word. Elowen's palms were sweaty, but she pressed on, fueled by a newfound determination. "I know many of you might not believe me," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "But I have worked hard for years, struggling to find my place in the art world. My pieces tell stories of passion, pain, and perseverance." Serafina's face turned pale, her earlier confidence ebbing away. "You? The artist?" she stammered, her tone a mix of incredulity and regret. The laughter that once surrounded Elowen began to fade, replaced by a heavy silence. "Yes," Elowen replied, locking eyes with Serafina. "I know I don't fit the mold of what you expect. I don't wear the same labels or live in the same world, but my art is real, and it deserves to be seen." The crowd shifted, murmurs of acknowledgement rippling through. Julian, standing a few feet away, smiled encouragingly. "That's right, Elowen. Art comes from the heart, not from the labels we wear." Elowen felt a surge of courage at his words. She took a step closer to the crowd, her voice steady now. "I have poured my soul into my work. Each canvas holds a piece of me. I want you to see it, to understand it, without the barriers of wealth or status." A woman in a sleek black dress spoke up, her voice soft yet curious. "What is your collection about?" she asked, genuinely interested. Elowen smiled, feeling the warmth of acceptance wash over her. "It reflects the beauty in struggle, the light that can emerge from darkness. I want to share the truth of our experiences, not the polished versions we often present to the world." Serafina's expression shifted, the disdain replaced by something resembling awe. "I had no idea. I'm sorry," she admitted, looking down, her bravado crumbling. "I judged you too quickly." Elowen nodded, appreciating the honesty. "We all make judgments, but it's important to remember that everyone has a story. I hope to inspire others to look deeper." The atmosphere in the room transformed from one of superficiality to genuine interest and respect. Guests began to approach her, their curiosity piqued. Elowen felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. "I'd love to see your work," one man said, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. "Can you tell me more about your inspiration?" "Yes, I'd be happy to," Elowen replied, her excitement bubbling to the surface. "Each piece is a chapter of my life, moments of joy, heartbreak, and hope. I'd love to share the stories behind them." As she spoke, she realized how freeing it felt to be true to herself. The fear that once held her back was dissipating, replaced by a growing confidence. She was no longer the outsider. She was an artist, a storyteller, and her voice mattered. In that moment, under the soft glow of the chandeliers, Elowen embraced her identity. She stood tall, ready to share her passion with the world. The night was no longer about the judgments of the past. It was about the connections being forged in the present. As the initial shock of Elowen's revelation faded, the atmosphere in the grand hall shifted. Guests, who had once surrounded her with scorn and laughter, now approached her with a new curiosity. Whispers filled the air, and the sound of clinking glasses became a backdrop to the unfolding scene. Elowen stood at the center, her heart racing, but her mind clearer than ever. "Is it true?" A woman with a delicate pearl necklace asked, stepping closer to Elowen. "You are the artist behind the collection at the gallery?" Her voice was a mix of awe and disbelief. Elowen nodded, feeling a rush of warmth at the genuine interest. "Yes, I am. It's a collection that means a lot to me," she replied, her voice steady, though her hands trembled slightly. Another guest, a tall man with a neatly trimmed beard, leaned in. "I have seen your work. It's incredible. The way you capture emotion, it's unlike anything I've seen in a long time." His eyes sparkled with enthusiasm, and for the first time, Elowen felt as if she truly belonged in this space. "Thank you," Elowen said, her heart swelling with pride. "I pour my life into every piece. It's not just art for me. It's my story." Julian approached, a warm smile lighting up his face. "Elowen, you were amazing up there," he said, his tone sincere. "Your courage to speak your truth is inspiring. I knew you had it in you." Elowen met his gaze, feeling a flutter of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without your words. You made me believe I could share my story." "Your story deserves to be told," Julian replied, his voice encouraging. "If you need help with your career, I'd love to assist you. You have talent that shouldn't go unnoticed." The weight of his offer settled over Elowen, filling her with hope. "Really? You would do that for me?" "Absolutely," Julian said, his smile broadening. "Let's make sure your art reaches the audience it deserves." As they talked, more guests gathered around, their expressions filled with respect and admiration. Elowen found herself sharing her journey, the struggles of being an artist, the late nights spent painting, and the moments of doubt that had almost led her to give up. "I worked as a waitress for years," she confessed to a small group, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I used to think that I would never be able to show my work to anyone, let alone in a gallery." A woman with bright red lipstick chimed in. "It's amazing that you pushed through those challenges. Your art is beautiful, and it's clear you have a unique voice." Elowen felt a surge of joy at their words. "Thank you. I believe that everyone has a story worth sharing. It's just a matter of finding the courage to do so." The guests listened intently, their eyes reflecting genuine interest. Elowen felt a sense of validation wash over her. The shame she had carried for so long began to dissolve, replaced by a newfound confidence. As the evening wore on, Elowen found herself surrounded by a circle of people who wanted to know more about her art. They asked questions about her process and inspiration, and each inquiry fueled her passion. She spoke animatedly, the nervousness that once plagued her now a distant memory. "Do you have any upcoming exhibitions?" one man asked, leaning forward eagerly. "I do. I have a show planned for next month," Elowen replied, excitement bubbling in her chest. "I would love for you all to come." The guests exchanged glances, nodding in agreement. "Count us in," another exclaimed, clapping her hands together. "We can't wait to see more." As the night drew to a close, Elowen felt a profound sense of relief mixed with empowerment. She had stepped out of the shadows and into the light of acceptance. The laughter and chatter that once made her feel small now filled her with a sense of belonging. Elowen glanced around the room, her heart swelling with gratitude. This night had changed her life. No longer did she feel like an intruder. She was an artist recognized for her talent and her story. And for the first time, she embraced her identity with pride, ready to face whatever came next. Elowen stood in her small studio, the morning sun spilling through the window and illuminating the canvases that lined the walls. Each piece reflected her journey, filled with colors and emotions that spoke of her struggles and triumphs. The memory of the gala still lingered in her mind, a bittersweet reminder of how far she had come. The applause, the respect, and the recognition had sparked something inside her, a fire she had almost forgotten existed. She picked up a brush, dipped it in vibrant blue paint, and began to work on a new piece. As she painted, she thought about the importance of authenticity. The words Julian had spoken that night echoed in her ears. True talent shines when we embrace who we are. She felt a sense of peace wash over her as she realized the truth in his message. No longer would she hide her identity or shy away from the spotlight. Suddenly, her phone buzzed on the table. She paused her painting and picked it up. It was a message from a local gallery. "Dear Elowen, we would love to showcase your work in our upcoming exhibition. Please let us know your availability." Her heart raced as she read the words. This was the opportunity she had longed for, a chance to share her art with a broader audience. "Wow, this is amazing," she whispered to herself, a smile creeping onto her face. The feeling of validation was overwhelming, and she realized how much she had needed this moment. She quickly typed a response, her fingers trembling with excitement. "Thank you so much. I am available and would be honored to showcase my work." As she hit send, the doorbell rang. Elowen set her brush down and walked to the door, curious about who could be visiting. When she opened it, she was greeted by Julian, standing there with a bright smile on his face. "Hey, Elowen, I just had to come see how you were doing after the gala," he said, stepping inside. "I've been thinking about what you did that night. It was truly brave." "Thank you, Julian," Elowen replied, feeling a warm blush rise to her cheeks. "It was a turning point for me. I never thought I would find the courage to speak up." "I could see it in your eyes," he said, taking a seat at her small table. "You transformed that room. People were genuinely interested in your story, in your art. It's not every day that someone can change the atmosphere like that." Elowen nodded, still processing the whirlwind of events. "I've been working on something new since then," she said, gesturing to the canvas still wet with paint. "I want to explore more of my emotions and experiences. It feels like I'm finally free to create without fear." "That's the spirit," Julian encouraged, leaning closer to admire her work. "Your art deserves to be seen. You have a unique voice that can resonate with so many people. Have you thought about more exhibitions?" "Yes, actually," she replied, her excitement bubbling over. "I just received an invitation from a gallery for an exhibition. I can hardly believe it." "That's fantastic. You deserve every bit of recognition that comes your way," he said, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Let's make sure you get the support you need. You should be out there, sharing your talent with the world." Elowen felt a surge of gratitude for Julian's encouragement. "Thank you for believing in me. I was so lost before all of this. It feels like I've finally found my place." "You've earned it," Julian said, standing up. "I believe in you, and I know others will too. Just keep being true to yourself. That's what will make your art stand out." As Julian left, Elowen felt a renewed sense of purpose. She stood before her canvas, ready to paint not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever felt out of place or judged. She would pour her heart into her work, creating pieces that told her story and resonated with others. In that moment, Elowen understood that she was no longer an intruder in the art world. She was an integral part of it, welcomed and appreciated for her talent and tenacity. The journey ahead was filled with promise, and she was ready to embrace it, one brushstroke at a time. Share this story if you believe that embracing your true self can ignite your passion and open new doors. Leave a comment about a time when a word of encouragement inspired you to pursue your dreams, and subscribe for more uplifting tales like this one.